main barrier to ratification in the United States? It's very simple. It's the U.S. Senate. As you know, for the U.S. to ratify a treaty, it has to have a 2/3 majority of the Senate vote. And President Obama has committed himself to pursuing ratification of the CTBT. So I think Cormac did a really great job of outlining why the CTBT is quite important and these concerns about North Korea. But from the U.S. perspective, it's also very important because President Obama doesn't have much time left in office, and he's quickly approaching being a lame duck president. So you do feel a sense of urgency on the U.S. side. And I'll discuss some of the senators' oppositions to the CTBT and some of the more substantive issues. But the main point I really want to get across is to all the other holdout states, don't wait for us. Ineptitude on the part of the U.S. Senate is really no excuse for the irresponsibility of other states not to ratify. So looking first at what are some of the domestic political issues and reasons why the U.S. hasn't ratified. The New START debate over the New START treaty, in December 2010 showed just how hard it is to get a treaty through the Senate. That was a relatively straightforward treaty building on years of arms control experience, and yet it passed by the lowest margin in history of an arms control treaty. It showed just the challenges that can come up from domestic partisan issues, and that was one of the biggest issues with New START, and it would be the same with the CTBT. As you know, in the U.S. domestic political climate, it's not so great right now. The White House-Congress relationship is really sour, and it's become a zero-sum game of scoring points between the Republicans and the Democrats. So that's one of the barriers. Another barrier is, from the White House perspective, getting a treaty through the Senate requires a lot of political capital. You have to play a lot of bargaining chips. The president has to decide, is this how he wants to play the remainder of his bargaining chips? There are still a lot of issues on his nuclear agenda, on his foreign policy agenda that he's going to have to get through. And so you have to decide, is this going to be the priority where you spend those bargaining chips? Also, if you pursue ratification and you spend those bargaining chips, what if the treaty fails again? The treaty came up for a ratification vote in '99, and it failed. Failing again would pretty much rule out U.S. membership in the CTBT. So it's a huge risk to push for the ratification debate and to not have it go through. But this isn't just partisan politics that are holding up the Senate ratification vote. There are also some substantive issues. When the CTBT came up for ratification in 1999, it didn't make it through the 2/3 threshold. The vote was 51-48. Again, it was a really sour domestic political climate, which was important, but there were also some genuine concerns on the parts of senators. The two biggest ones were the verification of the CTBT. Could this technically be done? The other concern was whether or not the U.S. would have confidence in its stockpile without the option of returning to testing. These two primary concerns have pretty much been resolved in the 15 years since the '99 debate and where we're at now. And if you haven't already, I would highly recommend the 2012 National Academy of Sciences report on this, which addresses these two issues and shows these technical hurdles really have been overcome. But there are some substantive issues that haven't been resolved. The biggest one is the skepticism among predominantly Republicans, skepticism of arms control in general. In the '99 debate, Senator John Kyle referred to the CTBT as a demonstration of the fallacy of arms control, that it doesn't actually limit anybody, therefore why should the U.S. limit itself? There's still some senators who carry that idea. There's a really strong lobbying campaign in Washington that believes this. So those ideas are still pervasive. Another concern that you have, that the senators have, which came up actually in the last discussion, the keynote lunch speaker, is how do you attract scientific expertise to nuclear weapons when you never have the option of testing? I'm not a scientist, but I can imagine if you do a lot of theoretical physics, at some point you want to know if your theory works and if it goes boom, so to speak. And this was a concern in the '99 debate, and this is still something that the U.S. is struggling with in terms of attracting the right people. Perhaps the biggest substantive issue right now for the Senate is we have a really young Senate in the U.S. Only 27 senators remain from the '99 debate. 13 of them are up for re-election this year. The CTBT debate is incredibly technical. It takes a lot of education. So getting over this hurdle of ratification is going to require a really strong education push by the administration. And they have started taking some of those steps, but time is running out. And if you can't educate senators appropriately, then they're going to fall victim to this partisan politics that I talked about before. But despite all of these hurdles, from the US perspective, there's a lot of good news about the CTBT. The US is the largest contributor to the CTBTO. It contributes 4 times more than China and 4 times more than Russia. It has the most number of facilities on its territory. Also, in terms of the CTBT, it's proven itself, the IMS has proven itself to be successful and to work. So there really is good news here. Also, the US has observed a testing moratorium for over 20 years. The US has the least need or interest in returning to nuclear testing. They conducted more nuclear tests than anybody else and have confidence in the stockpile. We invest heavily in the stockpile stewardship program and the life extension program. But what can others do to pressure the US? I think the UK in particular can play a really important role here in keeping this issue high on the visibility list. In meetings with Senator Kerry, UK counterparts, other states that have ratified, can keep bringing this up and saying, what about CTBT ratification? You need to keep it on the agenda. Because if Senator Kerry goes back to Washington and says, well, guys in London keep annoying me about CTBT, we have to push this with the Senate. You have to ramp up the education campaign. So there are things that outside states can do. But with all this in mind, again, I just think that some of these arguments that other states make, that they're waiting for the US, those arguments really are specious. Yes, the US Senate is in a deadlock. That's not an excuse for others to be irresponsible. So therefore, I would just put that to the other states and suggest that come up with excuses other than the US. And one of the best options that we can hope to get out of this is if you can get other states to ratify, then we can get serious about exploring provisional entry into force, even if the US does not ratify. Thank you.